The company's annual party was supposed to be harmless fun. Honestly, my body count is probably higher than everyone else's combined. I swear I wasn't trying to start trouble. It was just a joke, something to get a laugh during dinner. I said, my body count is higher than all of yours together. I meant it playfully, to lighten the mood. Everyone gave those half-laughs, awkward and uncertain, except him. He didn't laugh. Didn't even smile. He stood quietly and walked out without a word. The next morning, there was a folded note on the counter and an envelope from his lawyer waiting in the mailbox. Before we go further, I want to say don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. It helps this channel grow so more people can discover stories like this. Anyway, it was supposed to be funny. We were at Half Oak, drinks flowing, friends laughing. The vibe was light. When I made the joke, I repeated it, laughing. I probably have more experience than everyone here combined. People chuckled briefly, but it faded fast. Callum didn't even fake a smile. He stared at me, face unreadable, then quietly set down his fork. I told him to relax, it was just a joke. He stayed silent. The quiet made me talk more, teasing him, saying men nowadays were too sensitive. Still nothing. When the bill came, he put down some cash, stood, and walked away. Everyone's eyes were on me. I rolled mine, saying he just couldn't handle a confident woman. When we got home, he didn't yell or ask questions. He packed a small bag and said he'd stay at his mother's for a few days. I called him dramatic. He looked at me and said, "You think it's funny because it's never you being laughed at." Then he walked out. The next morning, his coffee mug was gone, and his wedding ring sat on the counter. I laughed when I saw it, but my hand shook reaching for it. The house felt wrong without him, too tidy, too quiet. I told myself he'd come back once he cooled off. At work, I told the story like a stand-up bit. Some co-workers laughed politely. One said her husband would have left, too. I brushed it off, saying men these days couldn't handle honesty. Inside, though, something twisted. When I called that night, he didn't answer. Instead, his mother, Ellen, texted me, saying to stop trying until he was ready. That made my blood boil. I called my mom, Ruth, who told me not to apologize for having a sense of humor. She said he'd come back once he realized how ridiculous he was being. A few days later, I went back to grab some documents. His office door was half open. On his desk sat a neat stack of papers, printed emails with the Grant and Foster LLP letterhead. My stomach flipped. I told myself it wasn't what it looked like, but still took a photo. That night, I texted him, we needed to talk. Hours later, his reply came, there's nothing left to discuss. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, realizing maybe he meant it when he walked out. A week later, a mutual friend's birthday dinner. We were both invited. I went, convinced Callum wouldn't make a scene. When he arrived, calm, collected, looking perfect, I felt a surge of pride. I wanted him to see what he'd thrown away. When conversation turned light, I joked again, saying I probably had more experience than everyone combined. The laughter died instantly. Someone coughed. Callum just looked at me, calm, and said quietly, that explains a lot. I tried to laugh it off, but no one joined. I accused him of trying to embarrass me. He said, you do that well enough on your own. My throat went dry. He stood, reached into his jacket, and placed an envelope beside my plate. You love being the center of attention, he said. Here's something worth talking about. Then he left. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside, draft divorce papers, dated 2 weeks before the dinner, before the joke. He'd already planned it. Everyone at the table avoided my eyes. I smiled tightly and said he'd calm down eventually. Later, driving home, the laughter that came out didn't sound like mine. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the papers. He'd prepared them long before I opened my mouth, like he'd been waiting for a reason. I told myself he wouldn't actually file, that he'd cool off once I showed I cared. I texted long messages about love, honesty, misunderstandings, but he never replied. One afternoon, I stopped by the house to pack. His study was locked, But I knew where he kept the spare key. Inside, everything perfectly arranged, folders labeled neatly in his handwriting: finances, messages, custody. I opened one and froze. Screenshots of my old posts, texts, even friends' comments about my life before marriage. Another folder, receipts and bank records marked misuse of shared funds. Every page felt like a quiet accusation. I whispered that he'd gone too far. But the more I flipped, the more I realized he hadn't rushed this. He'd been collecting evidence for months, building a case piece by piece. When he came home later, I confronted him. He said calmly, "Lock up when you're done." I asked if he was really doing this. He looked at me and said, "You already did." Then walked upstairs as if nothing had happened. 2 weeks later, mediation. I wore a simple navy dress, hoping to look composed. Callum was calm, rested, distant. I smiled politely, but he didn't look at me. The mediator asked if I wanted to start. I explained the misunderstanding, the joke gone too far. I said he'd turned humor into a crime. His lawyer opened folders, screenshots, bank statements, old messages. My stomach dropped. "They show a pattern of public disrespect," the lawyer said. Callum didn't speak once. When asked, he said simply, "I'm here for closure." I tried to gain back control, saying men couldn't handle confident women. I swore I never cheated. The lawyer replied softly, "No one said you did." Somehow, that hurt more. The mediator read the summary: property and custody awarded to Callum. Immediate separation. My throat tightened. I looked at him, hoping for mercy. He just nodded, thanked the mediator, turned, and left. "You wanted everyone to laugh," he said. The house felt hollow when I returned. His things gone. Drawers empty. Closets half open. His cedar soap scent fading. On the kitchen table, a thick envelope with my name. Inside, final divorce papers, signed and dated. No note. Just quiet finality. I called my mom. She sighed. "Maybe I went too far this time." I said humor shouldn't destroy a marriage. She said softly, "It wasn't humor. It was cruelty dressed as confidence." I hung up. For a long while, I walked the house, touching what he left behind. A chipped mug, one sock, our son's old drawing pinned to the fridge. Silence heavier than any argument. "It was just a joke," I whispered again, like saying it could make it true. But the room stayed quiet. That night, I sat in his chair, staring at the space where his computer had been. I thought about how calm he'd been. He didn't destroy me. He let me do it myself, piece by piece. I laughed once, shaky. I told myself he'd miss me. Deep down, I already knew. He'd stopped hearing me long before he walked out.